I've always been an avid reader. I think that had a lot to do with it. We were a household that I grew up with 3 daily newspapers. We had the Oklahoman and the Times and the Oklahoma City Journal that's run to our house every day. My dad was a preacher, always had a paperback in his back pocket. My brother refers to it as our family's morbid fascination with the written word. He was a book editor and then became a book agent. My sister was a journalist with McClatchy for years and years. So it was kind of something I fell into. I had a rather checkered college career, went for a while, disappeared, got out in the real work world and found out what that was like and said, gee, I need to get me one of these college degrees. And that was when I went back and went into journalism. And it was a real match for me. You know, the guy who hired me, I showed up there, I was in my second semester, early in my second semester working for the OU Daily, and I had every bylined clip that I'd ever written in my string book, and which was about 8. And I handed them to a guy named Joe Height, and I don't know whatever happened to that guy. But anyway, he hired me, and I always appreciated that. And Joe was very supportive. But I think about people who are gone now. I mean, people like Kevin Laval, you know, who taught me how to turn numbers into a story, and Tim Chavez, who was a fantastic business reporter, but then turned into sort of a great columnist and a community activist, and Wayne Singletary, who I sat next to for years, who taught me how to deal with disgruntled customers, and Don Gamble, who was my boss at a really early point in my career. Anne DeFrange and Jim Argo, all these people are gone now. But I learned so much from them. One of the things I'm proudest of was the one time that I witnessed an execution. It was at a time when they had just restarted executions, and this was the second or third one, the first African-American person to be executed since we restarted them. So there was a lot of media attention, and there were 12 journalists sitting in the execution chamber. And when it was over, we all gathered together in the prison library. And of course, this was when they were doing executions at midnight. And so it was the middle of the night. And none of us quite caught what his very last words were. He said something, it looked like, to someone there in the front row, one of his witnesses, but it wasn't very distinct. And so we weren't quite sure what he said. And the AP guy thought maybe he'd said something like, I'm still awake, and other people said, yeah, that's kind of what it sounded like. So none of us had good notes, and when I got back to the office the next morning to write a second-day story about what I had witnessed, I called the guy I thought he was talking to, which was a Muslim imam, and I said, do you know what he said? He said, of course I know what he said. He said, assalamu alaikum. He didn't say, I'm still awake. And so it was a simple phone call. It wasn't like I did anything big or uncovered anything spectacular, but it was just the everyday, shoe leather stuff that we do. And I still see that incorrect quote on the internet attributed as this guy's final words. So it made me feel good that I was able to get that right, because that's really what we were doing there. We were there to witness for all the citizens of Oklahoma, as the state does in some ways the biggest thing they do. They take a life, in our name. So I thought it was important that we were there, and I was glad that I was able to get it right.